Hey folks, I want to talk to you about Libya because the story now coming out should disturb everyone in this country. And I don't want us to just look at it from the horror happening over there because that's exactly how the system survives. They rely on that distance. They rely on us believing that the violence has nothing to do with us. Reports are circulating today that about 300 Iraqi Kurdish migrants were kidnapped in Libya while trying to reach the UK. Families were allegedly told to pay around $5,000 each. Some were threatened with organ removal. The message was simple and barbaric: pay the ransom or lose a kidney. That sentence alone should stop the country. Instead, I already know how the British debate will try to process it. Someone will say, well, they should not have taken that route. Some will say that's why they need to stop the boats. And that's exactly the problem. Because Britain has always started the story at the point where Britain feels inconvenienced. The boat, the hotel, the cost, the arrival. Nobody in power wants to follow the journey backwards. Back through the sea, back through Libya, back through the desert, back to the war that destroyed Libya, back to the detention sites, the warehouses, the ransom calls, the beatings, the forced labor, the sexual violence, and now these reports of people being threatened with organ removal. A person does not end up in that situation because they enjoy the danger. They end up there because the legal routes are either closed, restricted, or made so narrow that desperate people are forced into the hands of criminal networks. That is the part our politicians never want to admit. And I posed the question of Libya. I raised some of these questions on national TV during a parliamentary candidate debate. Smuggling is not just a crime. It is also a market created by policy. If you block safe movement, movement doesn't stop. It becomes more dangerous, and when movement becomes dangerous, the people who profit from danger become powerful. This is what Libya shows us in the most brutal way. The UN described the abuse of migrants in Libya as a violent business model. That is not activist language. That's the UN. Migrants have been detained, tortured, sold, raped, forced to work, extorted, and ransomed. And I've been talking about this thing for years. In 2017, the world saw footage of African men being auctioned in Libya for around $400. Everyone was horrified for about 5 minutes. Leaders condemned it, news cycles moved on, but the machinery continued. And the money is enormous. Chatham House estimated that human trafficking and smuggling generated almost $1 billion in Libya alone in 2016. That's just Libya, nearly $1 billion. When people say smash the gangs, you need to be much more serious about what we are actually talking about. This is not one gang hiding in a back street. It's a chain of profit, and I can tell you a lot about supply chains. Smugglers take money for the journey, armed groups take money at the checkpoints, detention networks take money for captivity, families are forced to pay ransom, people are sold into labor, and everybody, especially women and girls, are exposed to sexual violence and trafficking. And now we have these new reports of organ removal being used as a threat. The human body becomes the business model. That is the sentence I want people to sit with. The human body becomes the business model. And this is where Europe has serious questions to answer. Since 2015, the EU and Italy especially have paid hundreds of millions of euros into Libya, linked directly to migration control. The language sounds clean: border management, anti-smuggling, search and rescue, capacity building. Jeez, yikes. But what's happening in practice? People are intercepted at sea and returned to Libya. Return to a country where the UN and human rights organizations have documented torture, forced labor, trafficking, sexual violence, arbitrary detention. So Europe knows It knew, it still knows, and is actually paying for it. And Britain is not outside of that story just because of Brexit. In 2016, British maritime personnel helped train the Libyan Coast Guard under Operation Sophia. The official aim was to disrupt smuggling and improve rescue. Sounds admirable, right? Fine. Then answer the obvious questions. When people are intercepted by the system, where are they taken? Who checks what happens to them after they are returned? Who follows the survivor from the shore to the detention centre? Who records the abuse when the cameras are gone? This is where the whole British conversation becomes dishonest. We talk about refugees as if they are out of nowhere. We talk of refugees as if they've fallen out of the sky. Some are fleeing dictators that you have relationships with. Some are fleeing wars you have created. Some are fleeing hunger, persecution, forced recruitment, torture, climate disaster, or poverty shaped by global systems we have benefited from for generations. And when they survive all of that and arrive here, we reduce them to one word: illegal. The word does so much political work. It strips away the journey. It hides the violence. It turns survivors into suspects. A person crossing the desert, being kidnapped, beaten, starved, forced to call their family for ransom, threatened with having their kidneys taken, almost drowning at sea, and still be presented to the British public as the problem. That is why Stop the Boats is such a dangerous slogan, because it never asks what people are being stopped from or what they are being sent back to. Stop the boats and send people where? Back to Libya? Back to detention? Back to the militia that you've been arming for years? Back to the ransom economy? Back to routes where human beings are sold, tortured, and have their organs harvested? If a politician cannot answer that honestly, they are not fighting trafficking, they are using trafficking as a campaign slogan while keeping the conditions that make it possible. The UK's Rwanda plan and the Europeans' Libya policy are not the same thing, but they come from the same instinct. Move refugees away from the place where they can claim rights. Keep them out of sight. Keep them away from courts. Keep them away from lawyers. Keep them away from public sympathy. Because once people hear what someone has survived, the slogans become hard to sell. That is why Libya matters to Britain. It shows us the hidden cost of deterrence. More importantly, it shows us what unjust wars and attacks cause to entire generations. And the people paying the price are not the politicians standing on podiums. They're the people trapped in warehouses, drowning in the Mediterranean, or carrying scars across their bodies because we feed the machine. So the next time someone talks about small boats, ask them to start the story earlier. Ask them about Libya, about the money, about the Coast Guard. Ask them about EU and UK funding. Ask them directly about Britain's role. Ask them why safe routes are still so limited. Ask them why a survivor of trafficking is criminalized while the policies that push them into trafficking are called border control. Because the boat is not where the story begins. It's where the evidence reaches us.